We get up at mornings, we get ready for work, and we carry on with our daily lives. Then there are weather watchers, in its professional term, meteorologists. Today, SCASPA joins the world in celebrating the 2023 World Meteorological Day under the theme, The Future of Weather, Climate, and Water Across Generations. As the only port authority with a meteorological department attached to its services in the entire Caribbean region, SCASPA boasts of having some of the finest meteorologists. We caught up with a few who shared some interesting weather insights. Good afternoon. We're here with another meteorologist. It's so good to be in the presence of meteorologists. Can you tell us your name and your title and how long you have been here?
Yeah, my name is Dina Dixon. I'm employed as a meteorological observer, but I'm also a meteorologist and a trained forecaster. I've been employed at SCASPA since 2008, so that would be about 15 years. Going for 15 years, yeah.
Okay, Dina, that's a long time here. So, seeing that you've been here for such a long period, what sources do you use in preparing your readings?
In terms of the
weather.
Well, we have our instruments we use to do the hourly reports that we provide to air traffic control. So we have the wind instruments which are down at the runway, and we have the dials in the office, so we have the readings right in the office. We have sensors down at the observation site, which provides us with the information for the temperature and wet bulb, and we have a few other instruments which provide us with the atmospheric pressure, the barometer.
Okay, so I see you mentioned you have a lot of accolades as it relates to weather reading and forecasting. What really inspired you to become a meteorologist?
Well, initially I was thinking about going into the business field, but then I thought that would be a real competitive market. A lot of people tend to do business. So eventually I got the opportunity at the Met Office, and I just went from there. Going in school, I used to be a big fan of the weather-related topics. So I guess that's where the passion came from.
Okay, nice. So what are some of the most challenging aspects of being a meteorologist? Maybe you have encountered so far.
Well, I haven't. This one I'm about to speak about is basically the trust of the general public. In the past, some reports would have gone out to warn persons against severe weather, and I guess at the last minute the path would have shifted, and we did not get the intended bad weather. So the trust of the general public, that'll be a big issue, because during hurricane season when we send out stuff, the feedback is going to be like, they don't know what they're doing, and that sort of stuff. So that would be probably the biggest challenge.
Okay, but that wouldn't be entirely your guys' fault. I mean, weather changes, doesn't it?
Yes, very dynamic, but I guess being in the field, we're supposed to be experts. But if you're talking forecasters around the region, they would always tell you must have an incident, an episode where your forecast bust, meaning it doesn't work out as they predicted.
So what advice would you give to people to help them stay safe during a severe weather event?
Well, mostly in the Caribbean, we are mostly affected by either an event with strong rainfall, with heavy rainfall, or strong winds. So for the rainfall, for persons who live close to flood-prone areas, we would advise them to avoid such areas during the event. As it relates to the wind, you got to be aware of your surroundings. So if you live close to tree branches and so, I would advise you to try and get them removed. So in the event the wind is very strong, they don't become projectiles and cause damage to property or possibly loss of life.
Okay, so from what you've been explaining, I realize you have to be so very observant in the field of meteorology. What advice would you give to someone, besides being observant, who wants to become a meteorologist?
Well, when you venture into the field of meteorology, it's a lot of math. So let me just point out. I was kind of caught off guard because, you know, you're thinking it's more like geography related, but from the time you hit the second year, it's a lot of math. So you got to be putting in work when it comes to math. You have to have some kind of outlet to distress because it's going to get very frustrating at times. And you also need to be able to work in groups. Sometimes one of the students might be able to convey messages a little better than a lecturer, so you should be able to work in groups.
Okay. Is there anything that people often misunderstand about a meteorologist, like some myths that they might think about in contact with a meteorologist?
I don't know, I guess like when it comes to earthquakes and so, they would think it falls under our field, but that's seismology. Yeah, so that ain't necessarily meteorology, that's more seismology. But if you do, according to what you do your degree with, like a minor or what's not, you could get some information as relating to earthquakes and that sort of stuff.
Okay, and that we learned something today.
Yeah.
So what factors do you take into account when making a reading or observing the weather? What are some of the things that you look at besides the instruments telling you, okay, this is the amount of, what other things do you look for?
Well, let's say how do you say it? To know where you're going, you need to know where you come from. So it's good to know the history of the territory because we use a lot of models, but the models can account for certain local effects. So it's good to know the history of basically the island.
Okay. So can you give us a behind the scenes look at what goes into your daily day? If you kind of account for your daily day, you come in, this is what you do, so we can understand fully, like, this is what a meteorologist do during their working time.
Okay, when you come in, you normally check the observations, which would be recorded in our ledger. You could also check it online, where you could see the observations from the different countries, because you want to see what the weather is like. And then if nothing significant is happening, you look to carry those conditions forward. So you do your assessment to check the surface charts, which gives the synoptic outlook. You check the moisture, the amount of moisture in the area, and you check to see if there is any uplift. Basically, one of my tutors would have told me, stick with this abbreviation LIM, lift, instability, and moisture. So you look for upper level troughs would provide the lift. The M is instability. You look for areas of instability, which helps to promote cloud development, and then you look for the moisture, which is the source of the energy for whatever event.
Okay, you seem to know a lot. I mean, you're degreed in this field, and speaking of degree, I see you mentioned that you are a trained forecaster. Are you the only trained forecaster here in this department?
No, we have Mr. Elmer Burke, and Denver Martin. He was recently moved to operations. He's also a forecaster.
Okay,
yes.
So you fall in a line of forecasters here. Okay, thank you, Danelle, for this little chit chat. It was great. It's always great to be in the presence of a meteorologist, finding about the weather and celebrating World Met Day 2023. Do you have any final words?
Well, I'm just glad I could have, give my bit and contribute to the World Met Day presentation. I know you will nice up for us.
Okay, thank you. And we're here today on the topic of meteorology, and meteorology is certainly exciting, especially for me. Can you state your name and your job title?
Meteorology is quite exciting, yes it is. My name is Anwar Springer. I'm a trained meteorological officer here at the St. Kitts Meteorological Services. Yes, I've been working here for 4 years now.
Okay, it's a little fresh in it. Who do you look up to in the field of meteorology?
I actually look up to this meteorologist called Brian Shields. I stumbled across him when I was watching some weather reports on YouTube and stuff around the hurricane season, and He was quite informative, precise, and genuine with his approaches about forecasting and safety of the people, and that is what draw me to him.
Okay, great. So you have a role model in it. So then what are some of the most important qualities necessary to be successful in our meteorology?
Well, in our field, there are numerous qualities such as attention to detail, ability to work under pressure, the ability to work with others as well, because usually team stuff and a lot of togetherness is key. So also there's different stuff you need, like basically the analytical, logical thinker. You need to be observative and aware of like what's going on with you and stuff like that.
Okay, great. How does your work contribute to public safety?
Well, my work is we usually let people know early that hurricanes are coming and what's going on in the atmosphere. So I feel like that is important in terms of getting people ready for the if something, make them aware that something is in the atmosphere and they need to buy stuff and get ready and batten up the houses and stuff like that.
Okay. I see you mentioned awareness and bringing information to the public. And I know sometimes when we listen to weather forecast, we hear high and low pressure systems. What is the difference between these high and low pressure systems?
That's a good question. So I'll try my best to explain it in layman terms so everybody's understand. So
yeah.
the difference between high and low, high versus low, just how it is. First, we have to understand what is pressure, and in this term, pressure is force exerted on an object, but it is atmospheric pressure we are speaking about. So this is atmospheric pressure is how much pressure the atmosphere is exerting on a specific area above us or around us. So in terms of a high pressure system, first you have to understand how the winds flow versus in a low. So in a high pressure system, winds flow clockwise, but compared to a low pressure system, the winds flow anti-clockwise. And then we will understand about the air of the rising and the sinking air. So in a high pressure system now, you have more air exerting downwards on the atmosphere, so air will be sinking. Compared to in a low, you have more rising air. So this in terms bring different conditions with these atmospheric pressures. So in a low, because you have more rising air, you will have more condensation happening and more clouds forming. So as you know, the air rises, cools, and clouds form, rain falls. But with high pressure system now, the air will become sinking and coming downwards. So you would have more clear skies because you would have less air rising to have this stuff.
Interesting. Can you tell me a funny or memorable story you've had as your time here as a meteorologist?
Well, it probably was a time, I think it was early morning. It was having some bad weather, and we actually had a thunderstorm cloud overhead. That's called a cumulonimbus cloud. And it was like, supposed to go outside, we were supposed to do like, I was like right overhead and we had lightning and stuff like that. It was interesting and funny because it was like until the first time like that happened, and it's kind of scary, but it was cool for me.
And how you managed with that?
Well, luckily the office has a nice 270-degree view, so able to look around and still be able to give a safe enough reading along with the use of satellites and so on.
Okay, great. What is the most rewarding part of your job for you?
For me? I would just say, for me, seeing the planes go and come safely, because that is the main purpose here. That is what our weather is for aviation purposes. Also, the ability to alert people and know that if something passes, we have everybody was safe, we had minimal damage, nobody was hurt. So I feel like me being there to be able to send it out to different stakeholders to let them know what's going on and the public. That is just the big fight for me.
2023 theme, and I quote, "The future of weather, climate, and water across generations." What does that mean to you?
It means for me, especially me, seeing I'm so young, that we have substantial information and continuous evolvement in technology and stuff, just being able to be early to predict the weather and stuff like that, and better monitor and observe and pick up various patterns in terms of climate change. So we have climate change, pick up rising in surface temperatures, coral reefs, stuff like that, and just the weather on the whole, just being able to have something substantial for future generations to continue to build upon.
Okay, so before I let you leave, Mr. Springer, any young person maybe watching this or coming across this, what advice would you give to them who may have a slight interest in meteorology?
Well, I'll firstly say that meteorology is just not only about the weather. That's the first thing. It might sound like, oh, just clouds and wind, but it's actually about the whole general life as a whole. So you have to know a lot of things about the atmosphere. You have to know how things work, why the clouds might look like this, why the sky might look like this, why the wind's blowing so hard, stuff like that. And also be diligent in numbers and the mathematical field, because it's a lot of numbers when you come to work here as well. So also good in the field of physics, because you have to understand forces, because as I said, a lot of the stuff in the atmosphere is forces and stuff like that, cause hurricanes, atmospheric pressure, stuff like that. So all in all, just be open and willing to learn, because there's a lot of stuff to learn. It's a big field as well. You don't have to stay here and just be a meteorologist. You can be an agrometeorologist, a hydrometeorologist, you can climate meteorologist, you can branch off into various aspects and roles to do different stuff. So it's just not only about meteorology and the weather alone, you can do other stuff.
Okay. Well, thank you for sitting with me here today. And as a meteorologist yourself, I want to wish you a happy World Met Day.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's certainly good to be in the presence of a meteorologist. Can you introduce yourself for me, please?
Good afternoon, Nadia. My name is Meteorlogical. I'm the Senior Meteorological Officer with SCASPA, and I've been with SCASPA for the past 20 years. However, I've been in meteorology for the past 19 years.
Wow, that's amazing. In your capacity, can you generally summarize our local weather?
Well, for us here in St. St. Nevis, we are basically tropical in nature in terms of the weather conditions. And when I say tropical in nature, we're talking about average temperatures in the vicinity around 28 degrees Celsius. We are usually inundated by the trade winds, so we always have this generally fresh breeze blowing across the Federation from the northeast to the east direction. In terms of cloud cover, it's pretty much most of the time it's partly cloud. So they're relatively cool. So you have the moisture plus the coolness, so that's why we have tropical conditions.
Okay. So I see you mentioned you've been in meteorology about 19 years?
Yes.
That's a long time. What type of schooling or training is required to be a meteorologist?
Well, to become a meteorologist, you have to satisfy what we call the BIPM for meteorology. And that is basically once you complete a bachelor's in science in meteorology or relevant applied science, then you would have satisfied those core competencies in meteorology. For us, most of our training is done at CIMH, but the degree program is run through the UE program.
Okay. So, being in meteorology for so many years, can you tell me some common misconceptions about meteorologists and their work?
Wow, that's interesting. One of the major misconceptions is persons think at times that we are given an exact um, prediction of the weather conditions. What we're trying to do is we're trying to give an estimate, the best estimate possible based on the information at hand in terms of what is the expected condition at a particular time in a particular place. So for example, there are times that we may say weather for cities and leaders might be partly cloudy with some passing showers. However, persons in Boston may not get any showers and they will complain and say, well, you said the forecast called for showers. That doesn't mean, because we're saying that we may get some showers, we didn't say last year we'll get some showers. We say somewhere in St. Kitts and Nevis we are likely to see some showers. And there's a probability that we're trying to.
Okay. So, I like that you mentioned that. Can you tell me a time when you had to deal with a major weather event?
Well, let's see, I can think back on Irma, Maria, and Jose.
Interesting.
Those trifecta in terms of major hurricanes that were approaching St. Kitts and Nevis, and that would have been in 2017. Those would have been quite challenging because here is it that we would have had 3 major storms approaching the island in succession. And I'm talking within like a 2-week span, we had 3 major storms approaching the island. So it was difficult for me because here is it that I had to kind of ration the information to the general public. Because to tell the general public that we have 3 successive major storms coming towards us can create unnecessary panic.
Yes.
So what I eventually had to do was deal with the most imminent storm, and then after we have dealt with that, move on to the other, and so forth. That approach worked well. So looking at the lessons learned, I would say that was one of the positives coming out of dealing with Irma, Maria, and Jose.
What are some ways that climate change is affecting your work and the field of meteorology as a whole, from your perspective, of course?
From my perspective, climate change has increased the variability. When I say the variability, to put it in layman terms, the uncertainty in terms of a lot of these weather phenomena. So once ago, we would have recognized that you could have almost predicted with high level of confidence what threshold of rainfall or even what threshold of storms they are likely to receive. But now with climate change, you now see that has expanded. So with rainfall, we're now seeing a lot more in terms of a wider range, where you're seeing sometimes extreme dryness or extreme wetness. So you have a wider range in terms of rainfall variability. And similarly, you're now seeing it in terms of tropical cyclone, where you now, instead of just seeing up to maybe like a few category 3s and 4, you're now seeing a lot more category 5s popping up and so forth. So that is something that climate change has really kind of shown us a curveball. It's a learning exercise that we have to adapt to because it is real, and we just have to adjust to the effects of climate change right now.
Yes, so climate change is real.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So then, with climate change and the effects that you just spoke about, what kind of impact does the weather now would have on our lives, everyday lives for people here?
One of the basic impact is disruption. And persons can think about it. There are times that we would say that we expect inclement weather or severe rainfall totals for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So you as a general public now need to recognize, based on the information that we give, you have to now think, okay, should I walk with an umbrella? Would it be ideal for me to use an umbrella versus a raincoat? Should I alter in terms of move earlier to beat the rainfall? So these are some of the things that you now have to factor into your daily life. Or even in terms of persons who are using the ferries. For example, if you recognize, we may issue advisory indicating that we're expecting rough seas.
Or the high surf.
Yes, the high surf advisories. So would it impact you in terms of your traveling between the islands? Is it a case that you may have to now plan that in the event that you can't make it over from either St. Kitts or Nevis, sleeping over? So these are things that you now have to start to think about.
Right. So I'm still shocked about the 20 years in meteorology. That's a very long time. And in all that time and in all your experience, what is your favorite weather event?
It may sound weird, hurricanes. Hurricanes get my adrenaline pumping. I would have experienced severe migraine during past hurricane seasons and so forth. And although I might be sick at the time in terms of that particular ailment, just knowing that the general public is relying on my expertise, my guidance to get them safely through this event pumps the adrenaline and allows me to weather the storm basically. And over the years, and it's interesting because when you look at the theme for this year, for World Met Day, but we are celebrating World Met Day tomorrow, the Thursday, the 23rd of March. And in that theme, we are looking at the future of weather, climate, and water across generations. And if persons examine, there would have been so much changes in terms of the dynamics of these whether in terms of weather, climate, or water itself. If you look at in terms of the way we actually monitor the evolution of the Met offices as well as the water departments over the years. Because if you want to compare, for example, our neighboring island, Nevis. Nevis, you would say, is in the infancy stage of a Met office, whereas St. Kitts might be as a young child. Whereas if you compare us to Antigua who have a vast amount of experience dealing with weather, you can say it's an adult compared to us. So you recognize that meteorology has evolved across the Met services, within the Met services, and that is evident for us here as well. Because currently we would have had, as myself, as one of the most senior persons within the department, you have persons who would have had 10 to 15 years experience, and now we have a crop of trainees who we are hopeful will become the next meteorologist to replace me eventually.
So you can say, in a nutshell, each Caribbean country in meteorology, they serve their purpose.
Yes, they do.
Right. Okay. So I want to thank you again. It's always a pleasure to be in the presence of a meteorologist. I mean, we observe the weather, we live within the weather, so having someone who can explain the weather, it certainly is a privilege. Is there anything else people should know about meteorology and meteorologists?
I would just want to encourage the public to recognize that meteorology is an evolving science. It's a relatively new science. We are still learning a lot. The uncertainty is decreasing because the accuracy in terms of weather prediction has increased. However, it's a learning curve. It's not going to be perfect overnight. So we do ask the general public to bear with us. What we're trying to do is prepare you based on the information that we have at hand. We're giving you our best prediction of what to expect.
Thank you, Elmo.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, thanks for being here with us today. Can you say your name and your job title?
My name is Aikwan Faith. I'm a Met Officer Training.
How would you describe your job to someone who's never heard of it before?
Well, first of all, meteorology is the science dealing with the atmosphere and its phenomena, mainly including climate and weather. My job is very important. I'm an observer, so mostly I go out, check the clouds, temperature, pressure, and that sort of things. Yeah.
Okay, sounds interesting. So then, as you mentioned, you go outside, you check the clouds, pressure, and what's not. So what kind of technology do you use in meteorology?
Well, we use the thermometer, there's a digital barometer, There is the weighing gauge at the screen down below here.
Okay, good. So then I see you mentioned that you'll go outside and you'll observe the sky. Can you tell us a few clouds that we see outside in the sky, especially in this region?
Mostly there is cumulus, stratocumulus, there is altocumulus. Sometimes there is cirrostratus or cirrus, not all the time.
Okay. I see you mentioned cumulus clouds. What do they do? Or what's their function?
Cumulus clouds are low level type clouds, the more puffy ones that produce showers.
Okay. And how accurate do you believe your readings are?
On a scale of what?
Like a 1 to 10?
I say 8.
8?
Yeah.
So they're pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm pretty sure that you'll be around your friends and you're training to be a meteorologist. That's a very good skill or career path. If someone is interested in becoming a meteorologist, what advice would you give them as a trainee in your position now?
Well, go for your dreams. The job have a lot of opportunities, lots to learn. Just stay focused and aim for the stars.
All right. Thank you, Aikwan.